DMS iTech is a full-service IT management company serving clients all across Canada. They get involved in almost every single aspect of IT, whether it's different types of assessments, definitely data backup solutions, your IT infrastructure, procurement, if you're looking for hardware or software or bigger solutions. They're a Microsoft Gold partner, and so Microsoft Cloud Solutions is a big part of the offerings, as well as getting into network monitoring, and then of course server-side and desk-side support. Ron, if you could just jump to the next slide, please. So as I mentioned, they are serving clients all across Canada. There's offices in Edmonton, Calgary, as well as Toronto. One of the big things with DMS iTech is just their partnerships with Tier 1 vendors to deliver a lot of big solutions. They've got a lot of smart, talented guys in-house doing a lot of IT, and they get actually even more support from the Tier 1 vendors. So the solutions that they deliver are just simply outstanding to the customers, as well as the certifications. All of the IT guys are certified with a number of different certifications. So that's all I'm going to say about DMS iTech. I want to move on to actually introducing our presenters. Ron, if I can get you to go to the next slide. Great, thanks. So we've got two presenters today. The first presenter is Ron McClellan. Ron is a systems engineer manager with ExaGrid and has over 20 years of professional experience with a focus on backup and disaster recovery, capacity management, and performance. Also joining us today is Avram Woroch. Avram is a senior solutions architect with DMS iTech. With over 20 years of experience, Avram's focuses on virtualization and data center technologies, including storage, disaster recovery, networking, security, and optimization. Avram is also the leader of the local chapter of the Veeam user group. So at this time, I'm going to pass things over to you, Ron, if you want to take things away.
All right. Well, thank you, Brian. I appreciate everybody's time today, and appreciate your willingness to come and join us and learn a little bit about backup, disk-based backup, and those type of concepts that we'll be talking about. And of course, would be happy to field your questions at the end. I appreciate Brian's introduction there, and our friends at DMS iTech hosting and putting all this together. So we really appreciate them. Some of you may have already heard of ExaGrid before, and if you haven't, well, I'd say welcome to the fold. We of course do one thing, and one thing we hope we do really, really well, and that is build a backup storage, and specifically a disk-based backup appliance that applies compression and deduplication technology. We've been doing this for over 10 years now, and so I've been with the company for about that time frame, so a little over 10 years myself. You know, we started out, of course, explaining the benefits of deduplication to the world and what that meant. Our own patented technology was on byte-level deduplication. We have several patents that cover our secret sauce, of course, but you know, we just have a singular focus, and that is to make your backup environment as fast as possible using the most optimized backup software that you choose. And today, of course, we'll be focusing on Veeam, and then, of course, having the most efficient space backup target to send all those backups to that give you, you know, fast backups, fast restores, and some of the cool things that we can do now with our backups, like instant restores, things like that, being able to turn VMs on. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk a little bit about, you know, or specifically the virtual world today, and with Veeam and handling that. But of course, we can widen that if you have questions outside that as well. One of the things that I think ExaGrid is most proud about, if you don't mind me just spending a second touting here, is you're welcome, you know, after this event to go ahead and hit our website. We have over 350 published customer success stories, and I know that's going to sound wildly ridiculous. That's a huge amount of customers that is just willing to give, you know, their story, right? What problems they faced, how ExaGrid was able to solve those problems. We've put in the detail to even give the IT manager's name, the person that you know went through that. So it's pretty impressive just to go through that. We have a number of different verticals, number of different industries that we cover. That way, you know, if you want to talk to any of them or any other local customers, you know, we're an open book. We'd be happy to have you talk to them, understand, you know, how our product fits in environments and things like that. So very proud of that. And of course, for some of you, you follow what Gartner has to say. Gartner does no longer, they do not do a Magic Quadrant for this category in a year, or this anymore. They haven't done this for a year or so, if you notice the date at the bottom. But the last one they did, which they said was going to be their last one, they put ExaGrid in the visionary column, which we were happy about, as we have, you know, a single mission in life and a vision for that mission. It just makes perfect sense. The leaders in that space, of course, HP and EMC, everybody knows who they are, and of course they have a breadth of different products that the reasons why they're in that category. But we're pretty proud of being in that visionary, because we really do want to focus on one thing, and that's being a great disk-based backup target for your environment. And you know, it's amazing to me, I guess it's a testament to our product development that even a company that's 10 years old is still winning valid and current industry awards. Storage Magazine Gold Award last year as well was won. Some of you might be familiar with the DCIG Buyer's Guide. That's kind of a nice tool, even if you're not familiar with, you know, ExaGrid's role in that Buyer's Guide. They put out Buyer's Guides in a number of different product categories. It's awfully kind of nice because they go through and do a lot of vetting out and testing and kind of seeing the feature sets. Therefore, it can kind of help you in your short list when looking at products and things like that. Of course, like I said, you know, our friends there at DMS iTech, you know, are a great resource as well, and knowing what actually works out in the field. Again, lots of logos, lots of awards. I'm just kind of move through that, as I know our time is precious today, and I really want to get to the meat of this conversation. And so we'll kind of go through it. But if you don't mind, I'd kind of like to open this up to a general concept that, you know, in our years of talking with backup folks and trying to solve this problem, and especially in the space where you're looking at backup storage and you're thinking about all the factors that should go into a decision about why I need to pick a particular backup storage device and what my goals are around that. You know, as we've had these conversations over the many, many years, we've seen some things come to the top, and some of those things are, well, if you're going to provide a product that, you know, that does specific technology like compression and deduplication, well, then you better do it really well, right? I mean, that just goes without saying. Deduplication efficiencies need to be paramount, and this is why, of course, ExaGrid chose a hardware platform to do this, because of the CPU power and the processing and memory and everything that's required for that very CPU-intensive process. And so, in selecting, you know, a target, you'll want to make sure that that product gives you good deduplication, because that really has to do with how efficient that long-term storage is going to be. I mean, it's not uncommon for us to, you know, talk with folks like yourselves and say, well, I need, you know, not only months and months, but maybe now years and years of backups. We want to be able to fit that in the smallest footprint possible, right? That's really the goal. And of course, you know, it affects not only the footprint and the size of the solution, but it also affects, you know, your deduplication rate affects how efficient the data gets replicated off-site, right? The lower the deduplication rate, the more bandwidth it's going to take to get your data off-site. And that's usually a big goal for a lot of organizations, right? Is that you want to have your data in more than one place. Veeam often calls it the 3-2-1 rule. I like that, because you want, you know, basically you're just not putting all your eggs in the basket. You want to be able to have your data at multiple points for you to access in case there's various issues that come up. Now, of course, this is an important one. You want to be able to, I mean, bandwidth is one of those reoccurring costs you want to keep as low as possible. Therefore, the better deduplication, the less data that travels over the wire. You get it. So, you know, in looking at this then, you know, of course, it's all about backup window, isn't it? I mean, that's what it's always been. For the last, you know, 20, 30 years, it's always been about backup window, and that's the number one concern we always get is we want to have our backups done as fast as possible. And there's a lot of vendors out there that make a lot of claims, but essentially that should be everyone's goal, right, is to have a product that's just very, very fast and very, very short backup window. And then, of course, with that backup window, now that the backups are stored on that backup storage device, you want to make sure that the restores are done equally as fast, right? You want to be able to have access to that data when you need it, and you want it to be done very, very quickly. In fact, you know, like I said, back in the day, you know, we had the ability to do backups and we had the ability to do restores. That's great. With the technologies that have come out in the last few years, now we have the ability to actually do something with that data. We can actually spin up that VM, for example, and take a look at it, maybe put it in a sandbox, run it, test it, do some development, maybe even run some new software on it, or pull files out of it that we need to get access to. More of a granular recovery type thing. So there's a lot more that we want to do with our backups than just having them sit there somewhere else. And that's key for a lot of organizations. So we want to build a product that has that, addresses that value as well. Oops, sorry. And then of course, like I said, one of the things that happens is when you start looking at solutions out there is that your data is X today. Maybe it's 20 terabytes, 50 terabytes, 100 terabytes, whatever that number is. Your data's there, and you need to find a solution for that. But you also want to make sure that as your data grows, which it always does, I really do equate backup data to my garage. It doesn't matter how big it is, I'm still going to fill it up with stuff. And so that's just what happens, right? Our companies grow, and we try to prune these things, keep them down, but there's just always more and more data. And the concern there is, as you look at solutions out on the market, that as your data grows, oftentimes that system gets more and more taxed and challenged to be able to keep that backup window small. So you want to have that as a huge consideration, that when you solve this problem today and give yourself a fast, short backup window, that as your data grows, you want to make sure that that backup window stays small as well. It doesn't grow. So we're going to talk about that as well today in that. And these are, by the way, not only your concerns, as we've talked with lots of folks, this was also kind of ExaGrid's guiding framework as we took a look at, how do we build a product that meets these needs. And so we thought, okay, everybody's environment's a little different, right? Everybody does things based on the needs of their organization. So the first thing we thought of was, hey, let's make an appliance that does all this great stuff, but it fits simply into anyone's environment. So we built an appliance. You basically give it an IP address, connect it up via Ethernet, gig-E, 10 gig, or now 40 gig, which we support, and you plug that into your switch, and voila, you're done. That's I know it sounds maybe too simple, but actually it's that easy. So you plug that up via Ethernet. You give our appliance, like I said, an IP address, a host name. You go into our simple web interface, which I apologize we won't have really a chance to show today, but we can definitely, if you raise your hand in this one, we'll be happy to make an appointment after today and come back and give you a demo of what it looks like. But essentially, it's a simple web interface. You create a folder, just like you would do on your desktop, and then you're going to point your backups to that folder. It's literally that easy. For some of you that are running faster than Ethernet, of course, we give you multiple gig-E points that we can ingest to. We support 10 gig as well, as I've just mentioned. Just to let you know, just in case some of you are wondering about what flavors of 10 gig, we support the SFP Plus optical, the SFP Plus Twin-Ax, which of course is the copper connection, and the twisted pair. So we support all three flavors of the 10 gig, and then of course we now also support the 40 gig optical ports from Intel as well. And these are all dual port cards that are in the back of an ExaGrid. So very fast speeds that we can be working with here and getting the data really off your, production environment and onto your backup target. That's what the goal here is, right? Is to be able to collect all that data from your email servers, database servers, file servers, all that stuff, pick that up quickly. In this case, we're going to be, like I said, focusing on a virtualized environment and doing that with either VMware or Hyper-V using Veeam. It grabs all that data, those VMs, and brings them through their proxy, and then lands them directly on an ExaGrid, and we'll talk specifically about some of the interactions we have there and the optimizations that we can use to do that. But I just want to kind of first start off to show you, okay, this is where it would fit into your environment. ExaGrid, and I'll talk about this in just a bit, but we also provide an optional, you can get another ExaGrid, if you happen to be in, Edmonton and your remote office is in Lethbridge or wherever, you can always, put another ExaGrid there and have that be your DR site, or if it's in Vancouver or Toronto, wherever. I mean, it's completely up to you. And then, of course, I'll talk more about, you know, all that stuff when we get into replication and all that fun stuff. But it's really just that simple. I mean, our deployments aren't usually, you know, big, huge consulting services type of thing. It's a simple, you know, hour and a half rack mount, install, put an IP address on, create a share, go into Veeam in this case, set up the share as a repository, and you're done. You know, it's just made to be designed like all appliances to just fit simply in your environment. Now, when we take a look at products in this space, if you don't mind, I'd like to lump them in two categories because it pretty much is an us versus them model here. So most products came out in this space doing what's called an inline deduplication. And so this is the ability, of course, to take data that's being backed up, and as it gets sent to the device target, it gets divided up into, you know, a computational hash, which that goes into a hash table, and it ends up being very optimal, you know, blocks on disk at the end of the day. These products typically do a really good job at deduplication. Some of you may have even known some of these and worked with them. There's some big famous brands out there, and they do a great job at deduplication and saving of disk. They really do. You know, we definitely applaud them for, you know, pushing this technology forward. But one of the things that could happen as part of that process is that, you know, depending on the amount of data you have and the target you're ingesting to, because it's doing all that inline, that there could be a tendency that your backup application would have to be throttled back, or essentially your backup window taking longer as your data set grows because it is doing all that inline, okay? Definitely a problem that was solved later on with software, again, using some of your resources on your network to aid and help those disk targets. But, you know, essentially that's what it does. And then, of course, you need to clean up all those blocks on disk. And then probably one of the biggest challenges is later on when you go to do a restore. All that data has to be rehydrated from your most recent backup all the way to that very first backup. Everything has to be rehydrated. Now, in some environments, that might not be a big issue if you're just doing a restore. If you don't mind, I'm going to go back to some of those newer technologies we've talked about, like instant restores or VM boots. Now we're talking about performance challenges. This is where I have folks that, of course, tell me, yeah, I have a product. It was doing inline deduplication. You know, it's been working great for years, Ron, just like you said, you know, very good dedupe. But now I want to use these newer features. I want to be able to spin up VMs, multiple VMs. We've had a failover, and I'll explain a scenario like that in just a minute, where you know they may have had to try to run those VMs off of a product like this, and they just find that it just doesn't work. It either times out or has performance issues because of that inline process. And that's really, you know, the challenge. It's really that deduplication process inline, which becomes a penalty or tax during both the backup and restore process. So we wanted to kind of make and remove all that. That was kind of the first challenge we wanted to overcome. Was we wanted to give you this great thing called deduplication and compression. We just didn't want to give it with that potential tax or penalty in performance. So how did ExaGrid address that? Well, we did that by essentially giving you two products in one in the same appliance. Essentially, we give you a high-speed disk cache, i.e. what we call the landing zone, sitting on top of a highly efficient deduplication engine, right? That's based on the patents that we have over the years and all the fun stuff we've been developing for the last 10 plus years. So what does this disk cache give you? Well, it allows us now to look just like straight disk to your backup application. In this case, Veeam sees it as a standard repository. And basically, we act just like disk in that landing zone. So Veeam can send backups there. They land very quickly, of course, using some technology that I'll explain in a bit. And then for your most recent backup, we typically size at ExaGrid, my SEs will size for about a week's worth of backup, fulls and incrementals or differentials, to sit in that landing zone, because we've learned over the years, just like the industry has been touting, that, you know, what is it, 98% of our restores come from our most recent backups. So what we wanted to do was have very, very fast access to those most recent backups. And therefore that landing zone, keeping a fully hydrated image, your backup sitting there, gives you nothing but the ultimate in speed, right? It gives you the ability just to pull that back up and restore it very quickly from that location without any rehydration involved, including the ability to spin up VMs. If you don't mind, there's a couple of organizations that have shared their stories with me in the last couple of years. One of them was Hoffman Construction. They're in Portland, Oregon. Their case study, I believe, is out on Veeam's website. It's also on us. They were one where, 10 a.m. in the morning, their SAN had which is, I know, completely rare and claimed not to happen, a double controller card failure. And they literally just died. Their data store died. And their hypervisor was running, and of course everything else was running, but no one could get access to the data. Of course, if you think about that scenario in your own environment, your heart starts racing. You start thinking about updating the resume, and then of course this individual said, "Oh yeah, we've got Veeam, we've got ExaGrid. All I have to do is go into Veeam and take my backups that I did just last night and turn them on." And that's what he did. He basically turned on several VMs to the point where he told me that had he not had that technology, 300 engineers would have went home for the day because they just literally would have no ability to access any of their engineering work that they needed to do. His alternative was a 7-hour drive to an offsite location where they had, a tape copy that was somewhat old but still viable to be able to bring back if they weren't able to get. Now, luckily for him, he was able to get to his SAN manufacturer quickly, and they were able to get those parts the same day. And by, he said, about 3:45 in the afternoon, everything was up and running. He went into Veeam. He did a vMotion back, to his production, and not a user. In fact, I even asked, how many complaints did you get during the day? And he's like, surprisingly, none. Nobody knew we had an outage at all. I just was like, I said, well, lunch is on me today because I'm going to use that if you don't mind. And so I appreciated him sharing, a pretty vulnerable time in his organization. But it was because of that landing zone that he was able to then take those VMs and spin those up immediately to have access to that data and work off that. So again, a great feature of the product. Now, let me kind of picture in your mind kind of how all this works, just so you kind of understand how backups flow. Of course, backups are being picked up by, in this case, Veeam, right, through the hypervisor. It's grabbing those, sending them to the proxy, which is driving all this, right? And the proxy then sends them to the ExaGrid. It lands in the landing zone. Of course, we see that coming in. What we're going to do is start making a copy of that job. We don't do it inline, but it's essentially, as we see a segment of that job land that we know is there already, we're going to take that portion and we're going to start copying it to what we call the retention side of our system. It's that area when that job is fully copied over there or in partial. We're going to start the deduplication and or replication process. If that folder or that data set's been tagged to replicate, we will do that. That's why we do all this stuff adaptively. A number of things are happening in parallel. But essentially, it's that secondary copy that's sitting in the retention area that is actually going to be, the copy that we use, to do all of our deduplication against the backups we've seen before. So of course, those older backups get smaller and smaller because we have more and more comparables. But it's essentially, we do some stamping and it gets all the way down to that byte level comparison to what we've seen. So again, that's how we provide ultra fast restores for your most recent backups. It's how we provide the ability to spin up VMs. One other quick story before I move on. I happen to be in another state down here in the United States, and a very large automotive dealership was picking up their ExaGrid that was installed. Veeam went in, did the installation. The IT manager was able to back up about an 8 terabyte VM, not about average size in his environment. Basically, soon as it was backed up, took about 35, 45 minutes, and then he pretty much went into vCenter and blew it away. At that point, he turned around to the Veeam SE and said, "Okay, show me your magic." We started the clock. Well, they started the clock, and he was able to have that VM spun up in 3 minutes and 21 seconds. Of course, the Veeam SE said it was the longest 3 minutes and 21 seconds of his life because he really was hoping that this would all work, but the gentleman was very pleased at how quickly he was able to have that VM up and running and back restored. So those are the kind of things that we talk about when we talk about a Veeam and ExaGrid solution. And I'll just kind of show a kind of model about the architecture that I just kind of went through, just so you can kind of see visually how that works. Now that there's a lot more under the covers, but I think it gives you a pretty good understanding of the process, how it works, and why the landing zone is so important is because it gives you that ability to just land backups very fast, have very fast restores. Now granted, if somebody came to you and said, "Hey, I need to do a restore of a backup job that was 2 months ago," sure, that request is going to come into our system. We're going to look in the landing zone. Most likely it's not there, right, because it's so old. We would then have to rehydrate that just like any other deduplication appliance. No mystery there. In fact, that's probably something that everybody on this call would expect. So that's just, so it either comes from the landing zone, which is very fast, ultra fast, or it comes from the repository, which has to be rehydrated just like anything else. Again, very fast because it's coming off disk. We don't daisy chain our backups in our information on how we do that. It's a one-step approach. So anything from that most recent backup gets delta changed to all the backups that we've seen. So it's not a chain of them in serial, in case you're thinking it works that way. It's actually just a one-step to any of the backups we've seen. So that's kind of the first concept, and I apologize because I know it took me a while to get here, but the first big thing that I wanted to kind of highlight. Now, one of the things that we've done to kind of make this a little bit more efficient is we've decided, a couple years ago, Veeam shared their APIs with us, and so we came up with what's called the Veeam Data Mover. And like I said, Veeam grabs these VMs from the hypervisor, which uses change block tracking, right? So we're getting stuff that's going to be somewhat optimized right off our infrastructure. And Veeam, of course, is going to then take out white space, do some cleaning up on that. And if based on the job that Veeam's doing, there might be 5 or 10 VMs in that job, or however many there is. Veeam's going to do some deduplication on that job. And with ExaGrid, we say, great, leave that feature on. So we want Veeam to do some deduplication there to save in bandwidth across the wire, just getting to us. So the hypervisor is going to do some optimization. Veeam's going to do some deduplication, and then that's going to land on our system. So what we've done is we've actually taken a part of Veeam's proxy code and we've put it in the ExaGrid. So we're going to take our ExaGrid appliance, we're going to authenticate it into our Veeam environment. So now we've got an authenticated account, and so now we're going to use Veeam's proprietary protocol to stream those backups at about 6 times faster than CIF's connection directly to that landing zone that I've been talking about. So that's one of the key advantages of using ExaGrid and Veeam together, is we have this integrated technology that we've taken code and shared it back and forth, and of course putting a portion of their backup proxy on the transport protocol specifically, if you want to know the truth, on the ExaGrid system, so we can now have Veeam to Veeam communication. That's important because it makes everything so much faster than just a standard CIF share. Now, not only does it make backups faster, it makes restores faster, it makes spinning up those VMs that I talked about faster. It's just a great technology, and it's free and included in our product. I mean, it's just how we work with Veeam day in, day out. Now, one of the other advantages is we're noticing now with customers having larger and larger data amounts that the traditional way of doing backups, which is your daily incremental or differential and weekly full, is a great model. By the way, it's worked very well for a lot of organizations. But what we're finding is data gets larger and larger. Some of you have decided, you know what, running that full over my network every weekend is just getting to be a burden because of business constraints or whatever. So therefore, we're encouraging people to do more and more what's called synthetic fulls. And I apologize for the redundancy because I'm sure many of you know what that is, but I'll just do that for the few that hasn't been involved so much. But essentially what happens here is you take a full on the weekend, let's say, for example, and then Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday we do those incrementals or differentials. And then on Friday, instead of doing another full, we say, well, guess what? We've already got all those pieces throughout the week. Why don't we build the full from those pieces? That's what's called the synthetic full. Now, in most products, in fact, I'll say with every product, except for ExaGrid, when you're working with Veeam, if you send those out to your disk target, what Veeam will do is that it will gather back all those incrementals and put those back on the backup server. It'll then collect all those into the synthetic full and resend them back to the target. Well, of course, at ExaGrid, we felt that was a little redundant because we already have the incrementals or differentials. Why do we need to send them back to somewhere else? We already have that information. We're getting now the command from Veeam to say, hey, take all those incrementals that you've received during the week, and I want you to make a full. Now, with some products, too, by the way, you might get just a map of what that full would be. Kind of a picture, if you will, but if you ever actually needed that data, it would then have to rehydrate it and build it and do it as you needed it. We decided, again, the whole point here is to have this data readily available quickly when you need it. And so what we'll do in the synthetic full is, one, we aren't going to send the data back to your backup infrastructure to have it, combined. We're going to do that for you. We're going to do it right on the appliance, and we're going to then take that synthetic full and put it in the landing zone. So therefore, it's readily available for you to use and need immediately. Okay? And that's what we want to do. It's, again, about optimization, optimizing your environment, making it run better, more efficient, without having data flow over your network multiple times. And then, again, this has to do with the integration that Veeam and ExaGrid's done together. So that's kind of the first big thing that I want to kind of cover today. The second one is really what really makes ExaGrid different. You'll find most products in this space really do adhere to the rules on the left. It's a scale-up architecture. There's typically, even if you buy a straight disk or look at a straight disk, you're kind of in this boat, right, where you have some controller unit and you're going to grow with a number of disk shelves. And then that's great. That might work just well. In fact, I will honestly tell you that if you have maybe a couple weeks of retention, just using standard disk might be a very cost-affordable method for you. I'll be happy to agree and support you on that one. But when it comes to, many months of backups, again, that's where you get the advantage of deduplication. That's where you want to take a look at getting a product in more of this category. So, again, what we try to avoid is the whole rip and replace that many manufacturers force you to do. This goes back to conversations we've had over the last 10 years with backup folks that say, you know what, I want my backup environment to be stable and solid for many, many, many years. And we want it to be able to grow throughout the changes that we're going to have as an organization. So rather than forcing you, either based on your being full in a particular product and having to upgrade to a larger one, or like some manufacturers do after a couple of years, is they upgrade the hardware and basically say, hey, you might be happy with our existing product, but guess what? We're on a new generation now, and we need you to be on that. And in fact, we're going to raise your maintenance so much because we want you to get on that new hardware. I'm sure everyone on this call has experienced an organization that's done that. We didn't want to do anything like that. Again, this is backups. This is something that needs to be solid and scalable for many, many years. So ExaGrid came up with the grid. And the grid's the ability to have each appliance have that brains, right? It's got CPU and memory to handle that load of data, to deduplicate it. Of course, it's got the disk to be able to store it. But equally as important is the I/O, the gig-E ports, or 10 gig or 40 gig that you can connect in, which makes it great because at some point, like my garage, all this stuff is going to fill up and I'm going to need to add capacity. At that point, we can simply just add on another appliance. We connect that to the grid. In ExaGrid's viewpoint, we essentially give it an IP address. It comes up with our installation wizard and says, is this a new appliance in a grid, or are we joining a grid? And if you say we're joining a grid, it's going to ask you for the grid name. And it's going to then authenticate. We use Kubernetes authentication, so they know that each of them are secured together and that they can share information. As soon as you put that in, boom, they load balance and share information automatically. You don't have to do a thing. And now you've just, if you bought the same size of appliance, you've just doubled your capacity. You maybe even doubled your ingestion rate, which again goes back to my first comments, is how do we keep our backup window small even though our data doubles? Every one of our appliances are geared to handle a full backup of that appliance in under 5 to 6 hours, which means you could have 20 terabytes of data, 80 terabytes of data, 150, 250 terabytes of data. It does not matter. We build and architect the solution that's going to be no more than a 5 to 6 hour backup window for you. Okay, this is how you keep your backup window short, is by adding not only CPU and memory and the disk to go with that growth, but the I/O. It's a great shotgun approach, right? Is to get that data, and that's the goal. I mean, you're really here, right? It's the goal to get the data off your production environment onto something else as fast as possible. I think that's everybody's goal. So that's why the grid. That's why ExaGrid. This is just something that is unique to us. We wanted to have the ability to just grow over time and basically just mix and match. So we have a number of different products, and these are like Legos. You can mix and match them as your organization sees fit. You may have 20 terabytes today. The EX20, 21 or 32 might be a perfect appliance for you, depending on your retention and growth. When that runs out of capacity, you might only need to grow by 5 terabytes. An EX5000 might be your next solution, or it's 7 or 10. Again, it's very flexible in what you want to do, even at your local site, and it's even flexible as you want to move these appliances around to different locations. We can reassign them to do different things as well. So as you can see, we have everything from a 3 terabyte appliance, what we call a 3 terabyte appliance, and you notice that its usable capacity is 6. So I'm going to clue you in on kind of what we do under the covers here. And these are all, by the way, 2 and 3U appliances, most of them being 2. The few ones at the bottom are 3U. But essentially, we take that EX3000 and we apply 3 terabytes by default to the landing zone and 3 terabytes to that retention area that we've talked about. Now, that we can move that around, or the system can adjust automatically, but that's the way it comes default from ExaGrid. Like I said, it can be changed. Again, an EX5000 has 10 terabytes of usable disk, 5 for the landing zone, 5 for the retention area, things like that. So if you were doing a 2-site deployment, for example, and you're getting an EX10000 for your primary site, then you can actually get an EX5000 for the DR site if it's DR only, and just not have a landing zone, right? You just make the whole thing retention. That way they're even. And yet we saved you money because we were able to get you a smaller appliance for the second site. So we can do things like that because we right-size each location for a customer. Now you notice that everything above the 10,000 has an E at the end. That's our enterprise product size, our larger systems for folks that are doing that. And you can see from the top, we can have up to 25 appliances in what we call a grid, right? So if you put 25 of the EX40,000s, that is a petabyte of backup that we can do in 5 to 6 hours. Okay, that's the whole goal is to do that, right? Now, for some of you, I wanted to kind of give you another option here. We do have a separate line of products. Everything above an EX7000 can have an SEC, what we call secure nomenclature to it. These are all, by the way, the models that I'm showing you here on the screen. All are SATA and SAS technology. Most of them are SAS now, right? Economies of scale. But so we have these separate line from the EX7000 and above, which are SEC or secure models. Those actually use the same SAS technology, except for these are the Constellation drives from Seagate. Some of you might be familiar with them. You're welcome to Google them after our meeting today. But essentially, these are the same SAS drives. They just have on the bottom of them an AES 256 encryption chip on the drive itself. So we're not doing encryption in software, we're doing it in hardware. So if you're, I guess my point being is if you think you're going to do encryption at rest or want to in the future, then I would select those systems as what I'd want from ExaGrid, because it's very, very fast. All of our benchmarking confirms with Seagate's testing and everybody else's. Instead of a 30%, 20 to 30% hit in performance that you get with software encryption, you realistically see about a 2 to 3% hit doing it in hardware. It's just very fast, very efficient. The nice thing about the way we deployed it, which is the way that Seagate asked us to, which is, you set a password to the system, public and private keys are generated, they're placed in the controller card and on the drives, so there's no external key management that is required, so which is nice, just makes it easy. The good news is your data is now safe and secure. The bad news is if you get hit by a bus tomorrow and you didn't tell anybody the password, unfortunately there's nothing on this planet that ExaGrid can do for you. Because those keys were generated with a password that you came up with. So just, but the reason why I mention it is these products have become hugely popular, and I just want to make sure everybody understands. Now, I wanted to get here to where you can see what your options are for getting your data off-site. Of course, ExaGrid would love it if you wanted another ExaGrid system, and you purchase that, and you put it, like I said, in Lethbridge or somewhere else, which is fine. Or you can put it in a co-location facility. They can rack mount it, cage it for you. We do have a number of cloud providers that have purchased ExaGrids, and that way you can replicate to them, and they'll, it's nice thing about that is you're replicated, deduplicating data, and you're just paying for the optimized storage at their facility, and that really is an operating cost, right? An OpEx cost instead of a capital purchase, which is nice. At the end of this quarter, we'll have our Amazon S3 service available, so if you have Amazon and want to have that be your second site, we can replicate to an ExaGrid in the cloud, basically, is what that comes to. All that replication comes free with an ExaGrid product. We don't charge for replication. It's included, just like all the features, by the way. So if you have any advanced features you want to use, like the Veeam stuff or replication or anything that we do, they're all included. So it's just part of how the product works. For that replication, it is WAN encrypted, so you don't have to worry about that. We will use the same AES 256 WAN encryption for anything going to the second site, and the ExaGrid systems take care of all of that as well for that. So you have a number of options to do when replicating. So that's great. So of course, I really wanted to focus on the Veeam material today, but there's always somebody in an organization that likes to do their own thing, and I'm now going to slightly pick on our database administrators because they tend to be those people that like to do their own thing, right? They want to have their control of their own backups. So whether you're using Veeam, an application that we support, as well as many others, but you also might have some database stuff that you want to go directly to an ExaGrid, which is fine. We of course support SQL and Oracle dumps to us, as well as all the utilities that are in that space, like the Lightspeed and Redgates and Idera SQL Space or SQL. So that's SQL Safe is Idera. Sorry, those are all utilities in that database world, and we support all those as well. So it gives you the ability to have set up a share, and tell your database administrator, look, I've got a location on it here on the network that you can back up directly to. You don't have to use our primary SAN anymore, and they're going to love it because you're now giving them access to have their own sandbox and play, in their own pool. And so they love that. So we have, again, I want you to think of us as really just this catch-all for your backups coming from Veeam, or maybe you haven't 100% virtualized. You still have some physical in your environment, and you're doing that traditionally with maybe a Veritas product, Net Backup or Backup Exec, something like that, or Commvault, or the myriad of others out there. We support all those, and we can even be used in that transition from going from physical to virtual. So you can use ExaGrid for that. I know I'm running out of time. I wanted to make sure I give you guys an ample opportunity today to ask some questions, things like that, open that up at the end. But just real quickly, like I said, we can set up another time afterwards. If you want to see a demo, I thought I would at least show you a screenshot of what it looks like when you first log in, but essentially you have an asset tree on the left which shows you the sites that, or locations you might have ExaGrids in. You can name them however you want, but we happen to, in this example, we'll name them cities, and then the ExaGrids that are in that city as a grid, and then of course, you know, you can have one spread out, replicating as well, things like that. And then of course you get a little dashboard, shows you landing zone, retention space, and then a little deduplication summary. Of course you can do full reports on replication, deduplication, and retention. We have all those reports are available, but this just kind of gives you a little dashboard when you come in about what, you know, particular shares are given you and how much stuff is being sent there and how much is being housed. Real quickly to just talk about the hardware, you know, everything is RAID 6 with a hot spare in every appliance. So again, I know not, you know, all of you know what that is, but sorry, I'll be redundant here. And say, you know, it is RAID 6 2-drive failover, right? So you get that plus the hot spare. That's 3 drives of protection in every appliance. Power supplies are, of course, redundant. Everything's hot swappable out the front or the back, like the power supplies. NIC teaming bonding, of course, all those fun things. The SEC models that I just mentioned before, you know, they do have some government certifications, which are nice, and which is kind of cool. Support we do a little differently, and I'm just going to take the last probably 30 seconds, a minute, if you don't mind, and just kind of cover. We do this completely different. We assign a support engineer to every one of our customers. So a typical deployment is you purchase an ExaGrid. A couple days later, you'll probably get a call from a guy or gal. Let's say his name's Sam. He's going to say, hey, my name's Sam. I'm your support engineer. I understand. I just see that you bought an ExaGrid. It's coming to you in the mail. When would you like me to call you back and help you with the install? Sam will then call you back on that day. He'll work with you getting it rack mounted over the phone and plugged in and getting everything set up. And then he'll have to WebEx in and work with you on getting your backup application, in this case Veeam, fully configured. That takes about an hour and a half. When he's done, he's going to say, look, we're ready for backups tonight, so I'll be monitoring this. Here's the direct line to my desk. Here's my email address. If you have any questions, I'll be, of course, monitoring and watching this just to make sure here, but I do have the phone home stuff turned on, of course. So we do all that with every one of our customers, and it just gives you that personal service that, you know, in IT, man, it's great to know you have someone on your side that you can call when you have questions, you know, about changes in your backup environment, or, you know, not just simply when you have questions or problems or issues, but someone that you know is an expert that can help you. And I really want you to feel that that's what we're here for, is someone you can call, another member of your team that knows about backup, your backup environment, right? Because in the future, you're going to call Sam directly up, and you don't have to go through a CSR and all these things and tickets and all that monkey business. All you're doing is say, Sam, and he knows you, he knows your environment because he helped you set it up, and you know, you guys just move on from there. You know, it's very quick, very easy. All that's covered in maintenance and support. Maintenance support is 15% off the net purchase price. I know that's a little different. It's not off list, so it's off whatever price you beat DMS, iTech, and us on. Just lowers your maintenance, which is great. And then, of course, that covers all software, all hardware. You know, we take care of the hardware, right? If you're on maintenance, we take care of it. You don't have to worry about it, as well as the phone, home, things like that. I think I've used most of my time for the day because I wanted to leave some time at the end for questions and things like that. But I really appreciate everyone joining us today, hearing a little bit about ExaGrid. Hopefully I piqued your interest to look a little bit deeper. Like I said, we'll be happy to do a demo. As you can tell, we're pretty low-key guys. We just want to make sure that people understand all their options out there and what other organizations might be seeing success using our products. So we appreciate your time today. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to our moderator, Brian. So with that, thank you for your time.